Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 211. A Great Master's Arrival. The young Master Jun casted out the yin and yang escape law and secretly entered into a clothing store. Stole himself a robe. Left his half-torn attire hanging on the hanger as a replacement. And then proceeded to finding his way back to the Jun family's residence. The young Master Jun still wasn't skilled enough to be able to cast out the yin and yang escape law and return to the Jun residence in one single go, which is why his journey back was bound to take some time. The Jun residence was bustling with excitement at this time. It was rather hard to describe the scene. Not only was the house staff running about excitedly, even the family's elders were running about. One of the 8 great masters, the solitary falcon, had suddenly arrived at the Jun residence, which was nothing short of an honor for them. This was rather uncommon, even for families of such influence. Upon reaching the Jun residence, the solitary falcon had immediately reported his real name. He obviously didn't wish to disclose the real purpose of his visit, and cleverly chose to use Hai Chen Feng's treatment as the purpose of his visit. Even though the 8th great master wasn't ashamed of asking for advice, and was rather determined to seek help, but it would have been rather odd for him to state it publicly in front of so many people that he was here to seek advice from a child. His arrival had completely shook the Jun residence. So much so that Jun Zhangtian and Jun Wuyi had personally ran out to greet and welcome him and the half-dead Hai Chen Feng, leaving all their tasks unattended, and had cordially invited them into the dining hall. After hearing that the 3rd young master of the Jun family hadn't yet returned from his outing, the solitary falcon generously stated that it was quite all right, and proceeded to tasting the Jun family's homemade tea while warming up to Jun Zhangtian and Jun Wuyi's chatter. Jun Zhangtian, being a highly experienced war veteran, lived up to his reputation of being one of the best military generals ever born, and was quick to pacify his shocked state of mind, and was able to greet the solitary falcon in a very calm and casual manner, making this unusual incident seem very normal. Old man Jun deliberately established his family's reliability in front of his guest quite early on. Wu Yi, you must go and see if Mo Xia has returned yet or not. Once he returns, you must quickly bring him here. Saving lives is like fighting a fire. One simply cannot afford the slightest of delays. Jun Zhangtian obviously meant something entirely different. The solitary falcon has arrived to our residence in search of medical assistance. But is my grandson even capable of treating his companion? My beloved grandson might have indeed cured my son's deep-seated ailment, but we haven't really seen much of his medical expertise since then. And it will be very detrimental to our cause in case he's unable to live up to the solitary falcon's requirements. Having understood this, Jun Wuyi naturally didn't mind waiting for his nephew at the door since he anyway wished to know the matter, and didn't wish to allow his nephew to hastily start the medical treatment in case he wasn't equipped to handle it all the way. However, the real reason why the solitary falcon didn't mind these delays is because he needed to find more about Jun Mo Xia before meeting him in person, since he had already been informed that the youngster was quite a handful, and was hoping that he'd be able to get a better assessment about the young man's temperament from his family. I was asked to come and seek out the young Master Jun. The solitary falcon's words were enough to make Jun Wuyi and Jun Zhangtian realize that this wasn't just an accident. And they were both left thinking, so that's what's going on. They had long guessed that their heir must have had some secret dealing, since the youngster was already quite powerful, but had remained very tight-lipped about his whereabouts recently. This incident was enough for them to assess that their youngest generation heir was indeed a very influential character. No wonder that he wasn't afraid of facing off against the Shui Han manor. And this is the reason. Old man Jun had actually gone one step further in his assessment and had estimated that his grandson was even more influential than their initial estimate, since the solitary falcon had been asked to come and seek out his grandson. The solitary falcon is publicly recognized to as one of the strongest men alive. So who could have the power to tell him to come and seek out my grandson? Who's the man pointing him in our direction? And will this person also reveal himself in the future? Moreover, the solitary falcon's attitude at the time of addressing Jun Moxie's name was extremely polite and respectful. This was naturally enough to tingle their imagination even further. The solitary falcon has always been known for his rebellious nature. And I believe that even Li Ju Tian wouldn't be able to gain so much respect from such a man. Well, then who's more powerful than Li Ju Tian in this world? Someone so powerful that even this man admires and respects him? What does this indicate? This must obviously be the doing of Yun Bei Chen. No wonder with Yun Bei Chen's backing, it's no wonder that Jun Moxie wasn't afraid of Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian is nothing compared to Yun Bei Chen. This kid has been keeping too many secrets, and has even managed to win over Yun Bei Chen's admiration. But if Yun Bei Chen finds out that he was unable to heal this half-dead man, then things might go backwards for us. Old man Jun and Jun Wu were even more delighted to hear the solitary falcon admitting that he isn't as strong as Yun Bei Chen. But when it comes to respect, even the strongest man in the world doesn't deserve his. They simply attribute the second part of his statement to his arrogant and brassy nature rather than his ambition of challenging Yun Bei Chen when he was ready for the fight. Therefore, the solitary falcon and old man Jun continued to smile at each other in tacit understanding, completely unaware that they were thinking completely different things. At this time, Guan Donglu also heard about this visit. Upon knowing that the solitary falcon had personally come to visit the Jun family's residence, Guan Donglu was left wiping the sweat off his forehead. The Jun family has such a powerful backing. No wonder the Shui Han Manor is just an organization. And Li Ju Tian is never really there to help them, they just use his name because he's associated with them. The Jun family, however, can summon the solitary falcon to their residence in person. That shifts the balance, right? Fortunately, I made the lesser choice at that time under the impulse of my emotions. Else I would have rolled onto the wrong side by siding with the Shui Han Manor, and would have ended up provoking the combined strength of the Jun family and the solitary falcon. It seems that the Jun family is very wise, and their strength is still as unwavering as ever. He continued to sweat for a long time, and then joined the gathering. Each man was carrying a completely different idea in their head, but each man had already guessed that they were being shielded by some divine strategy and wonderful planning, and were reassured in the belief that they were being protected well. Therefore, the host and the guest were both in a very joyous mood. By the time Jun Moxie returned home, everyone was chit-chatting busily in the dining hall. Everyone, including the solitary falcon, seemed to be in high spirits. Jun Wu immediately caught hold of his nephew. What are you up to? Did you know that the solitary falcon has come here looking for you? Can you really heal his companion? Jun Moxie was rather anxious to return to his room at this moment since he wanted to put on his underwear first. He felt rather uncomfortable without one. Never mind. Let him wait. I'll go and change my clothes first. And then I'll go and see him. Jun Moxie hastily proceeded towards his room. Jun Wu caught a hold of him again. What's wrong with these clothes? They look clean enough to me. Now come. He half carried, half pushed, half hurried Jun Moxie rather barbarically into the dining hall in that state of private discomfort. It's you. The solitary falcon looked up and immediately recognized the man whose wine he had enjoyed so much just a couple of days ago. This obviously came as a big surprise to him. The man he was seeking had turned out to be a friend, and was moreover someone he had found to be very respectful in the past. Since this kid wasn't someone he had found to be rude during their past meeting, he immediately let go off his worries. I loved your wine, kid. I quickly finished those 2 jugs of wine. But I've been very impatient since then because I can't think of a wine that can equal yours. And then I wasn't even able to track you down afterwards. The solitary falcon's saliva almost flowed out of his mouth as the thought of that wine crossed his mind. In fact, he completely forgot about the true purpose of his visit. You will have to pay me 10,000 taels of silver if you want to drink more of my wine. Jun Moxie's reply left Jun Xie and Guan Donglu completely shocked, and their faces immediately turned red. They were rather amazed to know that the solitary falcon had an interest in their kid's wine, but his bold reply left them puzzled and angry soon after. The 2 men were left complaining in unanimity to themselves. That's the solitary falcon, one of the 8 great masters. Do you even understand the gravity of this situation, kid? He said that he likes your wine, and instead giving him a bucket of it, and then using it to build a solid relationship with him. You actually opened your mouth to ask him such a big price? What is wrong with you? Do you want to piss him off? Completely contrary to the expectations of these 2 men, the solitary falcon not only didn't take this matter to his heart, but actually broke into laughter, almost as if it was a funny joke. D***mn that. I'll pay you whatever you want. But first give me the wine. Then he laughed some more. I have some money on me right now, but it certainly won't be enough. So let me owe you for 1 night. And then I'll go about robbing several wealthy families in the morning. And I'll get you a few 100,000 taels instead. That amount should be enough to repay my debt with interest. Right? Now let me have my drink. Everyone was left sweating bullets. The 8th great master is talking about robbing people for money like a common criminal? You probably didn't understand my words properly. I decline that bargain since I operate a small business. And small businesses operate on cash transaction. And hence I can't afford to give out debts. Forgive me. Jun Moxie's tone seemed devoid of any room for accommodation. And then it became even more straightforward. If you don't have any money, then I won't sell you anything. The young Master Jun was acting this bold since he knew he was holding all the cards in this game. You're here to learn from me. And then you also need me to help you with a medical treatment. And now you also want my wine for free? That's 3 things. If I don't ask you pay for some of it, then it would simply be defying the natural orders of things. The solitary falcon's face immediately turned bitter, almost as if he'd started pleading at any moment. And then suddenly his eyebrows shot up as he angrily retorted, "You're extremely annoying. I'll go out and rob people right now. You'll regret this later. Please go ahead." Jun Moxie replied sloppily, "Go left. And go about 700 meters straight. And then turn right. You'll find the empire's most wealthy family's gates there. The Mu Rong family. Although there's a lot of money there. But I believe that it will be a tough task. And if it's too much to handle, then I suggest that you don't take the right. And keep walking straight until you see a tacky copper-colored gate. Go in there and you should find enough money. That's the wealth minister's house. And you'll find the houses of several nobles around that vicinity as well. In fact, if you search the area properly, you'll find that several wealthy businessmen and officials live in that area. And you should be able to rob enough money there. I'll be here to welcome you once you've robbed some." Jun Moxie smiled and said, "Old Falcon, I wish you the best of luck. As long as you are able to rob that circle, I'll give you enough wine for the rest of your life. In fact, if you wish it, I won't just give you enough wine to get drunk each day of your life. I'll give you enough to bathe in it." Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 212. You want me to save him? Let's talk about the conditions first. The solitary falcon was left stupefied. What is this boy saying? It seemed from the expression of the other people present on the scene, besides these two men, that their eyes would pop out of their sockets and would fall to the floor at any moment. That's the 8th great master, and just look at the manner in which the 3rd young master Jun is speaking with him. But even then the great master isn't losing his temper. What is going on? Has this world gone crazy all of a sudden? Well, I will not face that disgrace. I don't want your wine. I will not drink your wine. Not even one broken cup of it. This old man will not submit to your ridiculousness. And I won't ever drink your wine till the day I die. The solitary falcon sunk back down in an empty chair with a look of gloom spread across his face. I really wish I could get some more of that wine. I heard you came here looking for me. Jun Moxie smiled. What's that matter? Your foolish old master asked me to find you. He's asked you to cure this man. And then there's one more trivial thing he wants you to do. But we'll keep that for later. The solitary falcon's choice of wordings to describe the mysterious experts almost incited Jun Moxie into a laughter riot. Let me be clear. Curing this person will cost me. And I'll get no benefits from it. That's never a good thing to do in business. Jun Moxie shook his head from left to right with a look of disapproval on it. So why should I cure him? Because your master told you to. The solitary falcon was a bit angry at this point, but was finally beginning to understand the true meaning behind the mysterious expert's warning. Why? You think that means something? And you just came looking for me because he said so? He is he. And I am me. So why should I listen to him? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Why would I let him govern me? Don't I have a say in my actions? The solitary falcon was left staring at Jun Moxie speechlessly. I've never seen such a shameless apprentice before. According to the commandments of the 5 cardinal relations, the words of one's parents and one's masters are words of the law. Once a master appoints his disciple a task, the disciple must do whatever it takes to accomplish it without refuting a word of it. Moreover, Jun Moxie's master was a man worthy of respect, even in the eyes of a man of the solitary falcon's caliber and arrogance. If any other man had received such a great master, then the man would have taken any order of that master's as a law of the heavens. But this guy is actually pretending as if he's even greater than his own master. Has the world turned upside down? Why don't you just state your conditions clearly? As he stated this sentence, the solitary falcon felt as he was a lamb on the way to the slaughterhouse. I want him. And I want you to give the security. Jun Moxie smiled as he pointed towards Hai Chen Feng. If I heal his injuries, then it would be equivalent to saving his life. I want him to run my errands for 3 years. That really isn't much to ask for in return, is it? I can't promise that on his behalf. This man is a Sky Xian, and is considered a master in his own right. He's one of the leading figures of his generation. The solitary falcon shook his head. You must ask him for this. You ask him. Jun Moxie drooped his eyelids, picked up a cup of tea, brought it up to his face, and gulped down a mouthful. You can take as much time as you need. I have a few days of leisure at hand. So I really don't mind it. You may not be worried, but I am. And at the rate you're dragging this, you may have the time. But this man may just die. The solitary falcon gnashed his teeth and it almost felt as he wanted to roar out. Boy, you will heal his wounds. And then you will vomit out the secrets to improving my technique. Else I'll beat you up. You may be a supreme master's disciple. But I'm the solitary falcon, the 8th great master of this world. and I could practically pinch you to death. Hell, I could bury you any time I wanted. Just look at that arrogant expression on this kid's face. The solitary falcon squatted down to the ground to ask Hai Chen Feng, but accidentally found his eyes catching a glimpse of the scene under Jun Moxie's gown from his lowered altitude. The solitary falcon almost vomited. D***mn me. Just look at how straight his needle is right now. This boy didn't just crawl out of a brothel, right? This boy is a dog. Although he didn't have the energy to say it in words. But Hai Chen Feng's unusually firm and unyielding eyes were expressive enough to let the solitary falcon know that he wouldn't submit to such terms. Had he been able to open his mouth and speak, he would have said, "How can anyone expect a Sky Xian expert to give himself to such a young kid for 3 years just to save his own life? I would rather choose to die like this." The solitary falcon's tongue kept moving in persuasion, but Hai Chen Feng didn't budge. The solitary falcon seemed so anxious that it seemed as if the corner of his mouth would start foaming at any moment. Persuasion will never persuade an individual. You might be considered the 8th great master, but your reputation doesn't compare to meeting you in person. The young master Jun stated disdainfully, "Now watch me." The solitary falcon moved out of the way as Jun Moxie walked towards Hai Chen Feng, came to a stop next to him, lowered his body down to the ground, whispered a short sentence or a word in his ear. His voice was so soft that no one heard his quick words. Hai Chen Feng's eyes suddenly lit up even though his injuries was extremely severely, and he had only survived this long owing to his tough physique and the first aid treatment Jun Moxie had given him earlier. Else he would have died a long time ago. Although he had been unable to speak until now, but he suddenly found his strength from somewhere the moment he heard Jun Moxie's words, and spoke up with difficulty, "If that's true, then forget about 3 years. I'll follow you for a lifetime." Jun Moxie pretended to be chic about it as he stood up again, and brushed his hands as he shot a gloating sideways glance to the solitary falcon. The solitary falcon's eyes almost popped out as he shouted, "D***mn it kid. What did you say to him? How did that stubborn cow suddenly agree to it? What kind of evil sorcery is this?" The solitary falcon simply couldn't understand what words could have possibly gotten Hai Chen Feng so excited that he not only agreed to the terms, but also suddenly started glowing with a fresh wave of vital energy. He could clearly tell from Hai Chen Feng's expression that the man was actually willing to follow Jun Moxie to the end of the world. The secrets of the heaven mustn't be revealed. This young master has always been unpredictable. But you're free to speculate. Jun Moxie's lips curved into a nasty smile. You said something to him. And I want to know. So tell me. The solitary falcon's face was blank. His neck was red, while his lips were parted in shock. He had tried very hard to convince Hai Chen Feng, but the man had ignored it all. And then Jun Moxie barely spoke, and Hai Chen Feng excitedly agreed to it. This was a clear indication that there was a huge gap between the two men. These two have certainly met for the first time today. So how could this be happening? Jun Moxie smiled mysteriously as he said, I just told him one word, as long as he's able to follow it. I can guarantee that his strength will surpass the point where he could just swat any falcon out of the sky. Balls, the solitary falcon retorted furiously, what was that absurd word? Just one. And he agreed. Jun Moxie folded his arms as he continued to smile. Like hell. He can practice his entire life. And he'll never be able to do that. The solitary falcon contemptuously looked at Hai Chen Feng, simply unable to control that flame of anger in his stomach which was steaming his gastric juices now. I guess we'll just wait and see for ourselves. Jun Moxie stated confidently. Seeing Jun Moxie's expression, The solitary falcon suddenly found himself lacking in confidence. Will this kid really be able to achieve what he says? Jun Moxie sized up Hai Chen-feng's injuries. And then suddenly stated in a thoughtful tone, he seems badly hurt. But his injuries seem internal rather than external. How did that happen? What led to these injuries? He spoke as he glanced at the solitary falcon for solicitation. The solitary falcon's face turned red and hot, but with a hint of awkwardness encompassing it, and the man was left stammering speechlessly. How did this happen? Jun Moxie's tone was clearly intended to beat a drowning dog as he glared at the solitary falcon questioningly. Don't ask me. And stop chattering like a little girl, the solitary falcon roared back angrily. Quickly heal him. He. Jun Moxie shrugged his shoulders provocatively for a while, and then suddenly put on a serious face. Pick him up. And follow me. Are you giving me an order? It seemed as if the solitary falcon would explode at any moment. You dare have such courage? Kid. Jun Moxie paid absolutely no attention to him as he turned away. If you want to save him, then you will happily carry him for me. If anyone else touches him, then I'll simply strike him and kill him. You can try if you wish to see how serious I am. The solitary falcon's eyes turned as cold as ice seeing Jun Moxie's figure disappearing out of the hall, while his hair automatically rose up in the air, clearly depicting the formation of a vortex of anger inside his heart. He turned around and realized that old man Jun and the others inside the hall hadn't moved one step from their initial positions, and had been excitedly spectating this scene the entire time. The solitary falcon angrily stamped his foot on the ground, which sent the entire hall shaking with tremors, almost as if the hall had been struck by an earthquake. The solitary falcon obviously picked up Hai Chen-feng in his arms after being deflated by Jun Moxie in this manner, and could tell that the half-dead man was deriving pleasures from his misery. The solitary falcon smiled gloomily as he fiercely whispered, "Are you happy now, kid? You're almost dead. So enjoy each moment like it's your last because you're literally hovering between life and death right now." Then, he walked out of the hall, and followed after Jun Moxie. Everyone inside the hall had clearly felt the vibrations, so much so that even the ground under everyone's feet had suffered a few tremors, which had obviously left Jun Zhangtian, Jun Wuyi, and Guan Donglu smacking their lips. He is indeed abnormally strong. Just one stamp of his feet was enough to produce such amazing power. This is simply amazing. Guan Donglu praised out loud. But his real amazement wasn't owed to the solitary falcon's strength. Old man, you're lucky to have such an excellent grandson. He can even forge such relations with the solitary falcon and a disciple of the Blue Master. The Jun family indeed has a successor worthy of carrying its name to a prosperous and flourishing future. The Jun family's road to fame is just around the corner. He had just stated something similar a couple of days ago at the time when he had arrived to the Jun residence, but had only said it perfunctorily. However, this time he had meant these words from the bottom of his heart, and Jun Zhangtian and Jun Wuyi could clearly tell that from his expression. Grandfather Jun stroked his beard as his aged eyes narrowed into a modest smile. We really don't deserve the Guan master's words. You really speak too highly of us, ha ha ha. Even though he replied in modesty, but the smile on his face was stretching from one ear to the other. Guan Donglu's heart was obviously left feeling a sense of disdain. Your mouth is blanketing a hippopotamus-like smile, and you're still pretending to be modest. Your pride and arrogance is simply unbearable. Then, Guan Donglu sighed. Why don't either of my sons have such abilities? Why haven't they gotten such opportunities? What would one have to do to get such an opportunity? How can one make one of the 8 great masters obey them in such a manner? Let alone making the man obey them. If my two boys came face to face with the solitary falcon, they probably wouldn't even able to whisper their words, and would probably be left trembling in their spot. They would probably remain paralyzed rather than roving about carelessly like Jun Moxie. Even if they pretended to have such courage, then still wouldn't be able to pull this off. This is their level, this is their power, this is their heritage, The lord of the Guan family resigned to staring up at the heavens, completely blown away. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 213. Join me. You won't regret it. As he stepped into the small courtyard, even a man of the solitary falcon's experience wasn't able to prevent himself from being shocked. A huge meatball was trotting about in the small courtyard, and it was a while before the solitary falcon was finally able to determine the truth. This meatball looks like a person. This thing is actually a real human. My God. The solitary falcon couldn't help scolding the man within his heart. I have heard about it a lot that the life of these young masters are quite easy. But how can one allow themselves to eat so much? This is simply too much. Tang Yuan's injuries weren't as serious as they once were owing to the meticulous nursing by the young Master Jun, and he had already started moving about a few days ago. Moreover, he couldn't afford to be bedridden these days since his appetite had almost doubled up ever since Jun Moxie's treatment had started. So much so that even his old clothing wasn't fitting him nowadays. Tang Yuan's belly used to drop down to his knees earlier, but nowadays, his belly was almost falling down to his feet. Tang Yuan naturally sensed the enormity of the situation upon realizing the condition of his belly, and had started to panic thereafter. I need to lose weight. The young Master Tang was naturally very worried about the future of his intimate life. How will I be able to get intimate if I don't lose weight? I will be completely helpless. The gun may have the ammunition, but it can't fire if it's blocked. Besides, pretty girls won't like a body this fat. As a result, Tang Yuan had taken up another task apart from planning his business activities these days, jogging. However, the more he worked out, the more tired he'd get, which obviously increased his appetite. And then, his weight obviously started to rise again. As a result, Tang Yuan found himself caught in a vicious circle, and was finding it very difficult to break out of it. Naturally, one couldn't blame the solitary falcon for getting shocked upon seeing the humongous meatball squirming about in the courtyard. Tang Yuan felt an inexplicable sense of cold on his entire body as he came face to face with this black-robed man, and couldn't help feeling a shivering sensation running up his spine upon looking at the man's cold facial features and eyes. Tang Yuan's mood was already out of sorts at the moment, and coming face to face with this coffin-like face made him even more uncomfortable, and hence he stared back at first and then shouted, "Old man, what are you looking at? Never seen a handsome guy before. Have you?" The plight of the solitary falcon's facial muscles was a misery like no other. I've certainly seen many handsome guys in my lifetime. In fact, I've probably seen the most handsome of individuals, but I've never seen someone this fat calling themselves handsome before. I'm not certain whether you'd qualify as handsome, but given the thickness of your skin and body weight, I'm sure that you'd qualify as the fattest person alive. Nothing at all. The solitary falcon wasn't offended by his rebuke since the young Master Jun's temperament had made him immune to curses lately. Moreover, he found Tang Yuan's round body a rather interesting sight. "Boy, how much do you weigh?" Tang Yuan continued to jog in high spirits, and completely ignored the solitary falcon's question. Roll aside. This young master needs to lose weight. And don't ask me questions which dispel my enthusiasm. Tang Yuan obviously didn't know this old man's identity, If someone ever told him that the man he just shouted at was the 8th greatest master of this world, and was known for his ruthless nature, it is estimated that Tang Yuan would probably have accomplished his goal in a very short period of time. The amount of sweat he would have precipitated would have directly reduced his weight by a few kilograms in an instant. Good, kid. That's good. Once this old man has finished his business here, I will assist you in losing some weight. My tricks will certainly help you in slimming down by a lot. The solitary falcon stated out of goodwill. Tang Yuan heard this sentence and simply rolled his eyes, ignoring the help. You think that losing weight is that easy? You think I haven't already tried out the tricks, ah? There is no shortcut for losing weight. Hey, you're holding a half-dead man in your arms, and you're actually still interested in chatting about? Jun Moxie cried out in impatience. Solitary falcon, your composure is truly worthy of making you the 8th great master. It's really very admirable, ah. The solitary falcon roared back angrily, d****. I'm not stupid, okay? Tang Yuan's attitude suddenly disappeared after hearing this exchange of words. Who is that man the young Master Jun was talking to? The solitary falcon? The 8th great master? It was as if a giant landmine had exploded inside Tang Yuan's fat head. Fatty Tang staggered for a while on his feet first. Then his face turned pale. And then he fell to the floor with a plop, with his big mouth opened wide in a desperate attempt to inhale more air. While his head, arms, legs, and the rest of his body started to sweat like a fountain, wetting the entire ground around him with rivers of sweat. I actually just pointed a finger at the 8th great master. And then I cursed him. Tang Yuan's head started feeling dizzy upon realizing the gravity of the situation. And he soon found himself lying on the ground paralyzed, unable to find the strength to get back up to his feet. Since his assistance was directly refused, the solitary falcon carried the half-dead Hai Chen Feng into the medical room as per Jun Moxie's directive. The young Master Jun had recently ordered a new room to be built behind his bedroom for medical purposes. The art of unlocking the heavens' fortune was far more advanced than any of its counterparts in the world of medicine, which is why dealing with Hai Chen Feng's internal injuries was quite an easy task. In fact, Hai Chen Feng was even able to talk in less than the quarter of an hour. Can you really do it? What you promised me before? My opponent really is one of the 8 great masters of this world. Hai Chen Feng asked. You still doubt it? Haven't you already seen enough? Jun Moxie replied back. At least I have some hope now. I witnessed your master's skills, and it really isn't anything short of supernatural. I may doubt you, but I will never doubt your master's abilities. So, what do you intend to do now? I've decided to stay. Hai Chen Feng replied, anyway, I really have nowhere to go. I just wanted to travel away from the mainland in order to enhance my strength. But if I can do that by staying here, then what's the point of running around the whole world? Ah. If you join me, then you simply won't be able to leave whenever you feel like. Are you sure you understand this point clearly? Jun Moxie asked in a serious tone. That is only natural. Hai Chen Feng's face reveled in shade of resolve. Since I'm joining you, then I will do as you ask. I will follow you as I have promised. And I will not go back on my word as long as I get what I've been promised. That's good. Jun Moxie continued to pour more and more aura smoothly into his body. I'm short of people. Very short. I understand. Hai Chen Feng could feel his meridians constantly being replenished with energy, and could distinctly sense his body's vital force returning to its health at a very good pace. I also know a bit about the Jun family situation. That's good. Jun Moxie grunted twice. Hai Chen Feng. I wish to control the underworld powers of the capital. After I'm done curing you, you must set off to undertake this task. I can't accomplish my goals unless you can do this. No problem. Hai Chen Feng's eyes didn't even blink as his mouth slowly curved into a cruel arc. To him, a peak sky Xian expert, even dealing with a man of Jun Wuyi's strength wasn't an issue. With such strength at hand, and the Jin Yang Bang's support behind him, bullying the capital's underworld was as easy as slicing a chicken's throat. You may have misunderstood my intention. I just want this force for intelligence, and I cannot personally control it. However, since I wish to control it, I need you. Jun Moxie's face was carrying a profound expression on it, while his eyes seemed a bit gloomy. No matter what happened, you'll have to deal with all the problems on your own. Moreover, according to my intelligence network, the Mu Rong family and the Li family are also joining hands with several of these gangs nowadays. And with the affiliations of such powers, some of these gangs are building a very solid backbone, so their strengths definitely won't be weak either. I believe that they might even have a few people whose strength will be as strong as yours. Jun Moxie added. That won't be a problem. Hai Chen Feng reassured Jun Moxie, and then kept his mouth shut. As far as he was concerned, he would at most have to ask the Jin Yang Bang gang to assist him, and once he had reined the Jin Yang Bang gang in, the gang's name and force would be enough to control the underground forces of the entire city. After all, the Jin Yang Bang gang was the strongest underground faction of the capital, and could easily expand its forces if needed. Hai Chen Feng was confident that he and Jun Moxie could accomplish anything together. After all, the two of them were being backed by a very powerful family, the Blue Master, the Solitary Falcon, as well as a man of Jun Moxie's master's strength, who was seemingly even stronger than the greatest masters of this world. What kind of force could stand against such a powerful union? If the competition gets tough, then I can always ask my master to help us. And after today's matter, the Solitary Falcon also owes Jun Moxie a favor, and will certainly not sit back if asked to assist. Anyway, even if the situation still gets out of hand, then it still won't be a problem if Jun Moxie's master appears in person to lend a hand. With these thoughts to assure him, Hai Chen Feng obviously felt very confident about his position. I will not interfere with your operations and your decisions, Jun Moxie stated as he closed his eyes slightly. However, you yourself will have to operate with some sense of order and responsibility. Jun Moxie stated these final words in a heavy tone. Hai Chen Feng nodded in a serious manner. Once I receive any news of it, I will get in touch with you as soon as possible. My master is working on refining a medicine for enhancing one's Xian Qi, and it's very effective. That I can assure you. Once it's ready, you will be able to defeat your opponent. Jun Moxie smiled. You will not regret joining hands with me. Jun Moxie had just tossed his biggest bargaining chip. Naturally, the young master Jun himself was this so-called master. Hai Chen Feng's eyes brightened, and soon started reveling in a color of excitement. One of the strongest masters alive is refining a medicine. How can the product be bad, right? Hai Chen Feng simply couldn't help smiling mischievously as he started fantasizing about growing stronger one day, and then beating up the Solitary Falcon. The doors to medical chambers finally opened several hours later, and a rather exhausted-looking Jun Moxie came out. That man, the Solitary Falcon asked anxiously. Jun Moxie sighed, and then shook his head. Is he dead? The Solitary Falcon asked as his face suddenly turned gloomy out of sheer despair. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 214. Allow me to be your host for 1 year. You should be dead. Jun Moxie glared back at him. A genius was looking after his injury. And you have the courage to ask if he's dead? At this moment, Hai Chen Feng calmly walked out of the medical room. The solitary falcon had just opened his mouth to shout back at Jun Moxie, and was now left staring wide-eyed and open-mouthed at the marvel in front of his eyes. He was half dead when I brought him here, and now it's barely a few hours later, and he's actually walking out like nothing ever happened? Even a miracle doctor can't heal people that fast, right? This world has turned upside down, right? And I'm standing in hell today, right? Well, the solitary falcon rubbed his eyes in disbelief. All good? Your strength has also been restored? All good. Hai Chen Feng's sullen reply was clearly indicative of the anger within his heart. Never better, Master Falcon. The miraculous doctor has restored Chen Feng's body to normal. What were you trying to do? Do you know how costly your silly little trick was? Do you know how many insults I've had to bear in order to save your life? No. You have no idea. All the anger that the solitary falcon had been holding inside his heart finally broke out like a volcano now that he finally had someone he could take it out on. The composed Hai Chen Feng wasn't even able to reply back when he found his body tossed onto the ground by his master brother, and moments later found his own body becoming the target of a rainstorm of kicks and punches. This maltreatment was clearly visible to the paralyzed Tang Yuan, who was still lying on the ground. Whatever little strength his legs had mustered in this interim was lost again, and he found his body sweating even more profusely than before, while his head started to spin. As he continued to watch this scene, Fatty Tang's facial muscles started to twist in panic. A while later. Are you guys done playing around? Jun Moxie called out. Just a couple more. And then I'm done. The solitary falcon finally got up, kicked and punched Hai Chen Feng a couple of times more, and then stepped backwards, leaving the multicolored panda-eyed Hai Chen Feng singing a painful opera song while rolling on the floor. Don't touch him again. He needs to go out in a hurry so he can do some work the master needs done. Jun Moxie stated in anger. Hai Chen Feng was his comrade now, and watching his own comrade being beaten up so badly wasn't a very pleasing sight to his eyes. Hai Chen Feng had just been thrashed very badly, but he quickly climbed back onto his feet regardless of the pain, and then swiftly disappeared out of sight. Jun Moxie turned around and glanced at the solitary falcon, and just when he was about to say something, a sharp scream pierced through the courtyard, leaving them both shocked. The little Lolita had carried a tray of tea into the courtyard, but had suddenly found something very disturbing. Young master. This isn't good. This isn't good. The young Lolita was panicking. What happened? Young Master Tang. Young Master Tang. He fainted. The young maid pointed towards the big piece of fat. Tang Yuan was lying paralyzed on the ground, and based on the lack of movement of his fat body one could clearly see that the man had fainted. How did that happen? Jun Moxie stepped forward to assess the situation since no one had any clue as to how he had fainted in the first place. A closer look at his face, followed by a quick reading on his pulse, and Jun Moxie's facial expression suddenly became rather exciting. And therefore he quickly examined Tang Yuan's mouth and then muttered to himself, this makes the headlines, doesn't it? He is actually sweating out of dehydration. That's extremely rare. Sweating out of dehydration. Fatty is really very talented. He'll surely lose some weight this time around. This was first case of this condition that Jun Moxie had ever seen in his 2 lifetimes. Lucky or unfortunate. But Tang Yuan would be weighing his body the next day, and would find that he had suddenly lost over 10 kilograms. 10 kilograms in one day could only be described as a miracle in the history of the world of weight losing. Thanks to his recent breakthrough, the young Master Jun was somehow able to carry the young Master Tang up in his arms, a feat he previously wouldn't have been able to owing to the fatty's body weight. The fatty's weight was indeed commendable, but the same couldn't be said about his courage. Watching the solitary falcon's ruthless nature was enough to make him faint. The young Master Jun was sure that the man was in no danger whatsoever, which is why he simply opened the subconscious meatball's mouth and poured a mixture of salt and water into his mouth. Giving this fatty something nourishing will be counterproductive, so a pinch of salt in water is the best way to go about it. It won't give his body any nourishment, but it will still have the same effect on his state. Once he had resolved this dehydration crisis, he tossed the fatty's body down to the bed, and then decided to focus his attention on the solitary falcon instead. After all, the solitary falcon did have something very embarrassing and very interesting on his mind. The Jun family's honored guest did happen to be one of the strongest men alive, and it wasn't advisable to make a man of his status wait for too long. Besides, a dignified master of his caliber was just about to ask a young martial artist for advice. The world indeed was about to turn upside down. Well, what else do you want? The young Master Jun already knew the answer, but he just wanted to hear the solitary falcon ask him for his own advice. Today I had the great fortune of meeting your master. Haha. And his cultivation and skills are really superb. And his medical knowledge is simply a gift from the heavens. The old man and I talked for a long time, and we suddenly developed the warmth of old friends. He is a very interesting man. The solitary falcon opened his mouth and inhaled a huge volume of air since he managed to script a prologue worthy his worldly status. Of course, he was completely unaware that it would only be counterproductive in front of Jun Moxie. Oh. Jun Moxie used up every bit of control in his mind to prevent himself from breaking into laughter, and somehow managed to pull up a "is that so" look on his face. The solitary falcon seemed rather delighted by this, and continued in high spirits. We continued to talk happily, but then your master mentioned that he has you as his apprentice, and he seemed rather helpless about it since he had taught you a few pouncing eagle law strokes, and it's not yet up to the mark because of your lazy attitude. However, fortunately for him, he bumped into me today, and as everyone knows that there is no one more knowledgeable than myself in eagle fighting methods, and so he asked me to find you, and then help you with your training. The solitary falcon's voice started growing more and more confident, and it almost felt as if he was even beginning to convince himself of his words. Although I'm quite busy, but it's very rare to make such good friends these days. And so I reluctantly decided to agree to his request, and decided to help him in teaching you. The young Master Jun stood there with his head hung low in thought, but in reality he was just trying to muster every ounce of control in body to prevent himself from breaking into laughter, and was simply trying to focus his attention on his breathing. His right hand was placed right over his stomach to soothe the internal pain his body was suffering in order to endure these words with a straight face on the exterior. The solitary falcon's body curved into a pious posture as he waved his hand and stated in a casual tone, "Now that you're free, show me what your master has taught you so I can correct it, and then leave this city as soon as we are done. I need to return to my business as soon as possible, and I don't have much time to tarry here anyway." Old falcon. That can't be right. Jun Moxie opened his eye wide and stated in an authentically surprised tone, "Just last month, my master told me that my skill set with regard to the pouncing eagle, eagle claw, eagle paw, And Eagle Blade has already reached the pinnacle of this world's knowledge and expertise. And even he doesn't have anything left to teach me in that regard. So why would he send you here? Although my innate talent is poor, but I've always been very hardworking. In fact, that's what my master fancied about me when he took me as his disciple. So why would my master tell you otherwise? The solitary falcon was just left staring blankly, completely aware that his lies had been caught. But then he suddenly glared back and said, "Your master was probably just being humble. And I might have simply misunderstood his words as a result. But if you're a mountain of unpolished stone, then I can carve you into jade. Therefore, in that respect, it would be better if you allow me to help you. Don't you admit that?" Jun Moxie's expression transformed to indifference. "Okay. But I no longer practice those eagle laws that my master taught me nowadays, since that practice will only slow down my progress. Which is why my master gave me new laws to practice. And I've already started with them now. Maybe my master just pointed you towards me for the sake of medical assistance. And didn't really mean for you to assist me with my training. Right? So I think I'll go and relax now. And you should also save your strength. That way we all go about our conveniences. Okay?" The solitary falcon stared blankly for a long time, completely unable to find his words. A great master is offering help. And this kid is actually refusing. What wrong with the ways of the world? Is there no heaven anymore? The solitary falcon felt as if the whole world had turned upside down all of a sudden. He could clearly recall the days of his youth, when he and his counterparts would have to struggle for lengths of time just to get a strong expert to point out their flaws. And then they would carry those word or two of advice they would receive from an expert in their hearts for a long time as treasured laws. It was time when even imagining a man of his current status to mentor young martial artists was nothing short of a laughable daydream. What has happened to the world? Has it suddenly become fashionable to turn down a world-renowned master to teach you a trick or two these days? He. In fact, the truth is as such. The solitary falcon quickly realized that he had no other option left, and hence told him the truth, almost succumbing to his demise out of sheer embarrassment in the process. "So that's what's going on? You should have just said that earlier. Jun Moxie finally nodded his head in understanding, while inwardly chuckling at the same time. "Did you really think it was that easy to take advantage of me? Then can you wait for a little while? I mean, you're not busy or anything, right?" Jun Moxie's tone conveniently changed. "I have time right now. So why don't we start right now?" The solitary falcon suddenly felt elated upon sensing a breakthrough. "I did say that I'm free now. But I'm quite tired after that exhaustive medical task. Jun Moxie replied. "Besides, since you and that old guy are really good friends, then why don't you just ask him to teach you himself? Why would he send you to me? He is obviously goofing off somewhere. He is simply misusing my labor to gain a favor. This is to say that he simply just wants to use my effort and then gain some credits. That old man is so treacherous. I won't do it." The solitary falcon just stared on dumbstruck after having his hopes crushed once again. "I didn't expect that this kid would not only be a cheat, but wouldn't have any soft spots either. Now what am I supposed to do? I understand your difficulty. And I understand your feelings," Jun Moxie stated in a reasonable tone, "but you should try to see my side as well. It's in my nature to not do anything that doesn't give me any returns. What do you want from this kid? Just say what makes you happy, will you?" The solitary falcon once again found himself biting his teeth. "This kid will drive me mad in just one day." However, just then, the solitary falcon's eyes popped out of their sockets. Because at this moment, Jun Moxie's right hand made an action. And even though this action seemed very simple in its make, from being simple in reality, the 5 of his fingers were bent in half, almost resembling the claws of an eagle, while his arms seemed to be changing positions from below the elbow. His wrist was bent, while his fingers looked unpredictable, and one could clearly tell that each change in his arm's movement would increase the power of this claw. However, the most bizarre thing was that the rest of his arm above his elbow was actually completely motionless. Even a man of the solitary falcon's experience and knowledge had never seen such a trick in his entire lifespan. However, his knowledgeable eyesight could clearly tell the true power of this maneuver. He could clearly tell that once he was able to master his technique, then this one single technique would easily become the best this world has ever known. This one technique would easily be worthwhile of his entire trip and all the humiliation he's had to face in order to learn it. This is one of the 9 basic formations. Jun Moxie smiled. Good, right? The solitary falcon's eyes lit up as his mind gradually comprehended the maneuver, while his heart started to revel in the aftertaste of its visual. The more he pondered over it, the better he felt, and the more his knowledge increased. But he simply couldn't help the itch to learn more, and was forced to ask the same question once again. What do you want from me, kid? He had asked the same question once again, but the tone was a world apart from the previous time. Both sentences were impatient, but the current one was far more urgent than the previous one. I don't want anything from you in return, but I do want to give you something from my side. Jun Moxie grinned like a fox. I will help you in improving your technique. And I will help you increasing your strength. However, you will owe me a favor. It is to be noted that you will not owe my master a favor. You will owe me a favor. They are 2 completely different things. I already owe your master. And now I also have to owe you. I have to owe 2 people for one thing. The solitary falcon's forehead creased in anger, but then soon eased down as he realized that it would still be worth it. Moreover, being a great researcher yourself, I'm sure that you can understand that the study of a law as advanced as these ones, especially the more profound maneuvers, cannot be done overnight. Which is why I will have to ask you to stay in the Tianxiang city for some time so we can slowly and carefully explore your skills and calculate our progress properly. Jun Moxie's fingers mimicked his words with actions. Stop, the solitary falcon cut him in between. The first half of what you just said makes sense, but the second part was bogus. Stop beating around the bush, kid, and just clearly tell me what you really want from me. Allow me to be your host for 1 year. Okay? Jun Moxie's lips curved in an innocent and adorable smile. I'm not asking too much off you. And in this 1 year's time, I will provide you everything. Whether it is lodging, or food or wine, I'll take care of everything. The young Master Jun continued to lure the man in, and what's even better is that I will give you all the wine you want during this 1 year, for free of charge. You can drink as much as you want without even paying me any money. Even if you wish to go and have some fun in the Spirit Fog Lake, I will take care of it. I will not only pay for your fun, I'll even pick out the best delicacies for you. The young Master Jun smiled as he raised his eyebrows. You've traveled the world, haven't you? Where else would you ever find such a great deal? Ha! Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 215. Accomplishing the ultimate objective. The solitary falcon's temper had already risen sky high, and so he continued to stare blankly and silently at Jun Moxie for a long time before he finally gritted his teeth and asked in a fierce tone, You mean that you want me to be your hired goon for a year? Get rid of your wild dreams right now, or I'll show you what a nightmare looks like. You'd asterisk Ned Little be asterisk starred. How dare you even say that? Ah. No. No. Not a goon. You misunderstand me. Jun Moxie repeatedly shook his head again and again. You only need to live here with us. You're not required to do anything at all. Although I have one request. What request? Be straightforward. The solitary falcon's chest was rising and falling in rage. And he really couldn't help cherishing the idea of kicking Jun Moxie's buttocks. In case the Jun family is threatened with a grave danger. For example, the family is faced with extermination. Jun Moxie's tone suddenly transformed to a very earnest one. I hope that you promise that you will help us in resolving such situations over the course of this 1 year. But once this 1 year's time is over, we won't bother you. However, I cannot control the number of times that may happen in this 1 year, and hence can't make any promises. However, this is only for 1 year's time. Your practice of the eagle derivative laws will also take time, and you will need a dedicated space as well. And you'll also need opponents. Moreover, you will need the basic resources of survival. Jun Moxie continued in a serious tone, these I can provide for you. And in return, I just want to use your name to ensure the safety of the Jun family for 1 year's time. Nothing more. The solitary falcon's enraged expression slowly turned to a thoughtful one as he listened to Jun Moxie's words. As long as you agree, you will be the Jun family's most esteemed guest for the next 1 year. Your position in the family will be higher than that of my grandfather here. No one, including me, will ever command you into doing anything. And if the Jun family isn't faced with any crisis during this 1 year, then you can just leave with a pat on the back from our family because we will owe you for this. And you'll become a hero in my family's memory. Jun Moxie continued to glib. Moreover, I expect that my master will be visiting us quite often this year. This last sentence was a rather meaningful bargaining chip against the solitary falcon. Regardless of anything, arranging a dedicated space, opponents, and the basic necessities of life wasn't a difficult task for a man of his caliber. But finding the guidance of such a world-class expert was extremely hard. Encountering such a man even once in a lifetime in itself could be regarded as a blessing from the heavens above. Well, since your master and I hit it off, The solitary falcon sharply glared back at Jun Moxie. I promise you. Wonderful. Jun Moxie's lips curved into a wide smile. How about we head off to the Spirit Fog Lake and formally seal our arrangement with a night of entertainment? F***CKU. A kick. And Jun Moxie found himself dancing in the air like a trapeze artist. Jun Moxie had been planning on this since the beginning, and had been feeling as if the heavens were siding with him ever since he had laid his eyes on the solitary falcon again in the maple forest. Although his con to allure the two Xian beasts was likely enough to sort out the Shui Han Manor for now, but the Shui Han Manor was a huge organization at the end of the day. Moreover, their real background could be completely unknown to him at the moment, which made them even more dangerous. Even if they were forced to take a step back after Li Jutian's son was crippled, they could always bounce back in a while, since the youngster could always marry even if he was half beaten to death, enabling the Shui Han Manor to rise back in time. Therefore, Jun Moxie needed to protect his family against them, and he needed to perfect this protection. Moreover, even if the trouble with the Shui Han Manor was resolved, he still couldn't neglect the fact that 3 of the Silver Blizzard City's elders were now inside the Tianxiang City's territory. Given his enmity with Jun Wuyi, Xiao Han was unlikely to let this opportunity slip by. This would obviously provoke a rivalry between the magnificent Jewel Hall and the Jun family, which would obviously cause a storm. Even if the opposition wasn't capable of exterminating the Jun family, they still had enough strength and influence to humiliate them. Grandfather Jun. After all said and done, is one of the most important men in the country, and it would be awfully difficult for him to bear this insult at his present age. Jun Moxie had already taken all these aspects into account. In fact, he had always been most worried about the Silver Blizzard City and not the Shuehan Manor. After all, the Silver Blizzard City's people were in close proximity to the Jun family at the moment, and in case they were to make a move, the Jun family would find itself in no position to deal with their spirit Xian strength experts. Therefore, he needed to find a solution, and he was running out of time. He had initially intended on using his medical expertise to heal Hai Chen Feng in a very short time, and then show off his skills to Solitary Falcon to entice his curiosity, and then slowly improvise from that point onwards. Having proven the skills of this mysterious master in front of the Solitary Falcon would have easily improved Jun Moxie's status in the Solitary Falcon's eyes. However, the plans of the heavens above always supersede our own, and he ended up being placed in a situation of his making his own breakthrough, and as a result found himself completely helpless, and was forced into opting for the second best choice available. Left with no other option, he was forced to flee into the ground, and was then forced to plan everything all over again. Since Jun Moxie had somehow been able to accomplish everything he had initially ended, one could consider that his basic purpose had mostly been achieved now. Moreover, since the Solitary Falcon would bear witness to the Jun family procuring some very precious herbs in order to enhance the strength of some of their finest family members, a man of his ambition was unlikely to sit idly and not participate. Therefore, the moment he had discovered that battle in the maple forest, the young Master Jun had realized that he could easily formulate an entire feasible plan which would end up sorting all his problems in one single shot. Moreover, the success of this plan would achieve much more comprehensive results in the future. From this moment onwards, the young Master Jun had effectively elevated the Jun family's position in this situation of crisis. Now he intended on using this next year on focusing his attention on developing and increasing the Jun family's strength and influence. This entire scenario is what the young Master Jun had been painstakingly calculating ever since he had provoked the competition for the Xian Corps. At last he had finally accomplished his ultimate objective. The young Master Jun was in a very happy frame of mind now that his exhaustive efforts were finally bearing fruit. But the atmosphere in the magnificent jewel was shrouded in a mist of gloom. What's going on? The three elders, Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han, had been sitting in discussion of some important matters, with Mu Shuetong and Xiao Han wearing the looks of honest and dedicated men. Xiao Han's demeanor especially was poles apart from his arrogant and bullish one at the Jun residence, since he was wearing the look of the most well-behaved little baby on land in front of the three elders. These 5 people were representatives from the Silver Blizzard City, and were presently visiting the Tianxiang city on business, so it was only natural that ordinary men such as the people of the magnificent Jewel Hall had no place amidst them. At such a time, they were faced with an extremely surprising sight when the little princess flew into their discussion chamber, carrying a half-dead Xiao Fengwu with her. Even the weakest of these 5 men was a Sky Xian expert, but even then these men were left alarmed to see the condition and severity of Xiao Fengwu's injuries. They were obviously aware that Xiao Fengwu and the little princess had slipped out of the magnificent Jewel Hall to amuse themselves on the little princess's persuasion. But since most of the powerhouses had left the capital after the Xian Corps was taken away by those mysterious characters, and the city's state of affairs had largely restored to its usual calm, and so these 5 men happily allowed these 2 youngsters to take a stroll around the city, fearing that they would end up quarreling with a nagging little princess in the opposing scenario. Moreover, since the city's situation had quickly reversed to normality, these 2 gold Xian strong youngsters would be regarded as first-class experts by the city's standards, an assurance which comforted them into turning a blind eye towards their mischief. As it is, Xiao Han was quite happy to see his nephew's growing closeness to Princess Han Yen Meng. However, they never expected that this little outing would end with the two of them returning with Xiao Fengwu beaten half to death. His injuries were visibly very serious. But it wasn't just his injuries which made the situation so appalling. Xiao Fengwu's clothes were completely torn to the point where his lower clothing could barely conceal what lurked beneath. Moreover, his protective armor had also been stripped off his body. Xiao Fengwu was a member of the Silver Blizzard City's upper class, and neither of these men could comprehend that anyone would ever exhibit such hatred towards the youngster that the attacker would even strip the boy of his clothing. Han Yen Meng was quite surprised on seeing these 5 men waiting there for them. But upon seeing her loved ones, all the negativity and fear of her heart exploded in an instant. And she immediately ran into the third elder's arms, stomping, crying, and sniveling. This young girl had been so treasured by these men that they had never even allowed the prospect of dangers to lurk around her all her life. But today the third elder was having to pat her back in order to soothe her. Naturally his anger had surpassed all boundaries. Who would have the courage to torment the little princess of the Silver Blizzard City? Even our master, Han Fengshui, doesn't talk rudely to this little girl, for the fear that she may throw the most insane tantrums. I would have never thought that there would be a creature in the Tianxiang city capable of doing something like this to her. Moreover, he could clearly see the palm prints on her face, which when accompanied by her inconsolable and endless tears filled his heart with an aching sadness, adding to his anger in no other way possible. The 5 men peeked over and frowned as they saw the condition of Xiao Fengwu's injuries. His Xian Qi strength is still completely intact even though his body is so seriously injured. The 9th elder approached Xiao Fengwu and placed his hand over the youngster's body to impart his own Xian Qi in order to heal the boy's injuries, and was left frowning as he shared his finding with the rest of his companions. The other 4 men were also equally surprised upon realizing this. The little princess, however, continued to sob and sniffle, simply unable to understand the meaning of this sentence, which is why she sobbingly asked out of curiosity, "What do you mean, from the combat?" This wasn't the work of someone's Xian Qi. The attacker used pure force to do this. The third elder carefully looked at the youngster's body and stated with a heavy face, "Judging by his injuries, I reckon that the boy would have lost 9 lives in case the attacker had used his Xian Qi." It seems that even though this person's actions were extremely sinister to begin with, but they were just as measured and as calculated as his hatred. The 5 of them frowned almost simultaneously since they all realized that it would take someone much stronger than Xiao Fengwu to beat him up so badly. In fact, they could all clearly sense that the man must have at least been a Jade Xian, but was probably higher since Xiao Fengwu was a rather skilled fighter, which meant that an ordinary Jade Xian might not have been able to injure him this badly with ease. Although the fact that the youngster's clothes had been ripped off, and the fact that even his armor had been taken away with no signs of visible modesty left behind, was clearly indicative that the attacker was probably much stronger than their anticipation. However, in either case, it was evident that this was a case of revenge more than anything else. "Little princess, please don't worry. You can breathe easy now. You're safe. Slowly tell us what happened," Mu Shuatong stated. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 216. Operating separately. Yes, that's what happened. Han Yen Meng continued to sob, while her voice even stammered as she recollected running into that ked man in the maple forest, and the fight which followed soon after. Her audience, old and experienced enough in worldly matters, had already understood that this was probably just a misunderstanding and nothing more. Based on their evaluation of the man's Xian Qi level, They could clearly sense that the man was probably running around an *ked inside the forest in order to practice some sort of martial technique when the little princess and Xiao Fengwu disrupted his practice, forcing the man to halt his activities, which probably provoked the man as a result. Given the manner in which things had happened, one must give credit to their wisdom since their guess was partially correct from one perspective. Did that man know your origin? The sixth elder asked the most crucial question. Did he know? Han Yen Meng wiped her tears, and then said, he didn't seem to know about us in beginning, but just when that man was about to leave, Brother Xiao said something and that man immediately became very furious. Then he grabbed Brother Xiao and started beating him up. And then Brother Xiao ended up looking like this. What did Fengwu say to him? The 5 men anxiously asked at the same time. These 5 men had already assessed that this one particular sentence must have enraged that *ked man, and hence, knowing this sentence would clearly explain the problem that aroused this incident. Brother Xiao said, the Silver Blizzard City will not let you get away with this. We will exterminate your entire family. Little Princess had obviously learned how to mimic people because her impersonation of Xiao Fengwu was very accurately animated. Her tears still lingered on her eyelashes as she finished narrating this sentence, and could sense from the reaction of the 3 elders that there was something probably very wrong with this one sentence in particular. The 3 elders sighed at the same time. This is just bad luck, isn't it? It's only common sense to exit in peace when you can clearly see that the other side is far stronger than yourself, especially when you're stranded alone, and without any backup. Instead of retreating, he actually started threatening the man, and then went one step ahead and threatened to destroy his entire family. Even if he really wanted to take revenge for the incident, then he should have left that to a time later on in the future. This kid is really very inexperienced in life. The 3 elders were evaluating this scenario with a lot of care, and firmly believed that they themselves would have retreated if ever faced with such a circumstance. The 3 men were in agreement that Xiao Fengwu's life had actually been spared by the mercy of that mysterious *ked man. Silver Blizzard City is of course the most powerful faction of this world, and everyone is afraid of our prowess. However, openly bragging about our name can sometimes be enough to get you into mortal danger, the 3rd elder sighed. This person may have acted mercilessly, but he's definitely not a murderer. His facial expression suddenly changed, and suddenly became very unsightly as he stated this sentence. Even though he hadn't finished his sentence yet, it seemed obvious that he was finding it very difficult to continue. The 3rd, the 6th and the 9th elder had been working together for many years now, and had a very clear understanding of each other's thought processes. The faces of the 3 men changed to the same ugly shade since they were evaluating and assessing the situation with a similar mindset. The 3 men were thinking the same thing at this moment. If this person is in a position where he isn't even afraid of provoking the Silver Blizzard City, then that leaves us with only one option. If we wish to avoid any future problems, we'll need to silence the man. However, the 3 elders weren't completely willing to make this choice either, because the man could have made the same, but he didn't. Not only had he not made this cruel decision, and had actually spared the lives of their 2 younglings, the man had even refrained from causing direct harm to the little princess. However, the man had knowingly left Xiao Fengwu in a very embarrassed physical state after beating him up to near death. This was sure to ignite an insuppressible flame of hatred in Xiao Fengwu's heart, which wouldn't simmer down until the man was dead. The man didn't kill Xiao Fengwu, but made sure to provoke him in the most outrageous of ways. And such an action could only be explained in one way: that man wasn't bothered with the Silver Blizzard City's strength. In other words, the man was so sure that not only did he not seem afraid of the Silver Blizzard City, he was actually considered himself to be strong enough to contend against them. Basically, if the word of this incident was ever to become public, the reputation of the Silver Blizzard City would suffer a lot of harm. The next step would obviously be to assess the man's strength, and that of his backers. However, in present times, there weren't too many factions which were capable of carrying out such a brazen act of insolence against the Silver Blizzard City. The Shui Han Manor is unlikely to be behind this. The third elder and Xiao Han were in agreement on this. However, the latter was working a completely different angel in his mind. The Shui Han Manor's people didn't even show up for the Xian Corps. So it is unlikely that this was done by one of their people. Anyway, if this was done by one of their people, then given their world-renowned arrogance, the man would have obviously left a mark behind. They like their boldness to be recognized by the world. But this was done in silence and seclusion, so it is unlikely that they have anything to do with this. So who do you think was behind this? The sixth elder raised his silverish eyebrows. I believe that there's only one family in the Tianxiang city that harbors a hatred deep enough to do something like this. Xiao Han's eyes flickered coldly, and that family is the Jun family. Only the Jun family would be so sensitive to the Xiao family's name, and therefore I believe that this must be their doing. According to the little princess's description, the man had said, "I hate the family name, Xiao." This sentence clearly indicates that the man harbors an enmity against the Xiao family. And later on, once Feng Wu revealed his identity, the man violently thrashed him. The one basic point that we can deduce from this is that this person may not be an enemy of the Silver Blizzard City, but he certainly hates the Xiao family. And on this point, I'd like to state the obvious: most families who harbor such sentiments against the Xiao family are dead, and the very few that still remain are not currently based in the Tianxiang city. Hence, the only family that complies with all conditions at hand is the Jun family, and Jun Wuyi. Xiao Han obviously considered Jun Wuyi to be his greatest mortal enemy. Therefore, it was rather obvious that he wouldn't miss on any chances to blame his enemy or the man's family. Although the manner in which he had stated his argument made his reasoning sound very plausible, but even he was well aware that it was highly unlikely in reality. Moreover, framing and acting against both Jun Wuyi and the Jun family for this incident would be a very hard task. However, he had never imagined that the irrational villainy of his heart would actually be supported by the facts in reality. He could have never imagined at this moment that this act was actually the doing of a Jun. Xiao Han, I've always known your villainous nature, but I had never taken you to be such a despicable character. These are two completely different things, and yet you insist on blaming this upon Jun Wuyi's head? Even if you have an old feud with the man, slandering his name in this manner isn't justified. Then why don't you tell me the reason behind the hostility exhibited by this person? And that too against the Xiao family alone? Xiao Han was obviously not willing to give an inch in this argument. Hostility? Maybe you don't understand this, but everyone else here does. This was plainly just a case of misunderstanding, and nothing else. Anyway, if your nephew hadn't been so arrogant, then none of this would have happened to start with. And in case this incident was incited by feeling of revenge, then do you really think that the man would have acted with mercy? Mu Shuatong spoke up furiously. Acted with mercy? This man was so merciless and devious that he left Feng Wu in a far worse condition than dead. Apart from the Jun family, I really can't think of any faction in the Tianxiang city that would exhibit such hatred towards the Xiao family, and would actually dare to act so arrogantly and murderously even when threatened with retaliation from the Xiao family and Silver Blizzard City. Xiao Han's arguments had started increasingly plausible at this point. Then why don't you tell me this? Who would have such strength in the Jun family? Ha! Are you telling me that there's a person in the Jun family who's talented enough to be at least a Jade Xian expert at such a young age? Mu Shuatong laughed angrily in hysteria. Our intelligence has gathered a complete profile of the Jun family's strength, including the entirety of their secret connections. So why don't you spot someone who actually fulfills all the requirements to be our culprit? That old man, Jun Zhang. Isn't he a Sky Xian? This would have been an easy task for him. What's the guarantee that he didn't do this? Xiao Han argued back. Everyone present on the scene looked at him as if they were all staring at an idiot. Are you actually suspecting that old man? Have you really lost your mind? Forget about everything else. Even if that old man was presented with an opportunity to kill off the entire Xiao family, I reckon that the old man Jun would still refuse to run amok and *ked publicly. That man was very young, and was in fact too young to even be the old man Jun's son, let alone the old man himself. The little princess spoke up at this point. The little princess had often heard about the romance between her elder sister and Jun Wuyi, along with several tales of the Jun family, and had formed a very favorable impression of the Jun family as a result. Little princess, you do not know of this. But this world has several methods by which one's appearances can be completely transformed to that of another person's. Xiao Han knew that it would be hard to win over everyone's trust with his fallacious arguments, but he was determined to hold up a strong defense nonetheless. Yes. Moreover, Jun Wuyi's strength has also reached the Sky Xian realm, and he surely wouldn't refrain from running around and *ked in order to extract revenge against the Xiao family. You've gone mad. You know well of Jun Wuyi's immobile condition, and yet you continue to argue this point? What motive do you wish to extract from this? Mu Shuatong retorted angrily. Even if we blame and kill Jun Wuyi for the occurrence of this incident, then I'm afraid that the eldest princess will probably throw herself off from the tallest mountain peak of the Silver Blizzard City and commit suicide to meet her love in the afterlife. What motive could you possibly achieve from forcing these two lovers to do such a thing? Xiao Han's eyes reddened in rage while his breathing unevened in anger. And although he tried to speak up a few times, he eventually didn't. I'm certain that this wasn't the Jun family's doing because there is one more thing that I haven't mentioned yet. The little princess's face revealed a color of horror as she recalled something. What else? Everyone present on the scene questioningly redirected their gazes to her unusually terrified face. After that man left us alone in the maple forest. The forest suddenly disappeared. The little princess's eyes were opened round and wide in horror as she narrated the scene in a rather terror-stricken tone. The entire forest turned ash-gray. And then the wind blew, and the entire forest became nothing. And there was just an open space left, a bare and open land. Nothing else. The three elders immediately stood up after hearing this. Even the ninth elder, who was busy providing first aid to the injured Xiao Fengwu, was no exception, leaving the injured youngster to spray out more blood from his mouth. Is this really true? Are you sure that you're telling us the right thing? The three elders opened their mouths at the same time. One really cannot blame the three elders for being so alarmed upon hearing such a thing, since even men of their experience and knowledge had never heard of such an occurrence, not even in a distant legend. This incident had already surpassed the damage Xian Qi is capable of causing. The Silver Blizzard City had spent generations of effort into collecting all kinds of objects and treasures, assessing their usefulness, usability, and had been studying and exploring such rare treasure with just one objective in mind: ridding the human body of the shackles imposed by Xian Qi. Thus, the reactions of the three elders were obviously warranted upon hearing the existence of someone with such abilities. I'll immediately accompany the little princess to the forest to see this for myself. Xiao Han, you will immediately contact the Tianxiang royal family. and you will thereafter request for their imperial physician. Use any and all resources available in the magnificent jewel hall to ensure that this boy's injuries are cured. Ninth brother. You will stay here and watch over the magnificent jewel hall. Moreover, you will send a messenger pigeon back to the Silver Blizzard to inquire if this was the Shui Hun Manor's doing, even though it probably isn't. Mu Shui Tong. You will follow your sixth uncle to the Jun family's residence. And you will assess their reaction to this situation in order to check if they actually have such an expert in their family. Although it is unlikely that they were behind this, but they are an entity under suspicion here. This needs to be taken care of immediately, and we will have to operate separately and simultaneously. The third elder commanded in a calm and composed manner. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 217. The Riddle of the Throwing Knife. Yes, everyone responded in agreement at the same time. One must agree that the third elder's planning was very rational. He had intentionally sent Mu Shuatong to the Jun family instead of Xiao Han, since Xiao Han was likely to incite trouble at the Jun residence by making rash accusations. The third elder had been bestowed with a very important and sensitive responsibility by the master of the city at their time of his departure: do not cause any trouble with the Jun family. The third elder hadn't been a participant in that matter in the beginning. In fact, the entire affair surrounding the Jun family had been carried out very secretively, and only the Xiao family was involved in it, while the others got know about this situation much later on. And although the situation had already calmed down quite significantly by then, but it had already brought upon some very serious consequences. When it came to this matter, even the Silver Blizzard city was internally divided into two different factions, each with its own set of arguments, which hadn't been resolved even now. Personally, the third elder carried no malicious sentiments towards the Jun family, but he carried no favorable impression of them either. However, he did carry a sense of sympathy when it came to the eldest princess, which in his heart had led to an unfavorable impression with regard to old Shi Xiao Han's stubborn attitude. In his personal opinion, what would such pressure from the elderly bring? Even if they are able to arrange a profitable marriage. But in case the bride doesn't consent, then the groom would be nothing more than a licensed stalker. Even if the couple was forcefully tied in the knot of a marriage, it would only bring discontent and would only lead to an unhappy married life. However, he was still quite furious with Jun Wuyi and the Silver Blizzard city's eldest princess for finding their match away from their dominions. It was because of them that the Silver Blizzard city found itself internally divided into two opposing and mutually hostile factions, whereas the princess was now found either practicing as hard as possible to increase her strength, or lost in her own thoughts and fantasies. Meanwhile, Xiao Han's nature was becoming more and more violent and distorted with every passing day, and the distances between the Xiao family and the city's family was continuously growing apart. This as a result was obviously leading to even more destruction for the Jun family in return. The third elder's speed was so astonishingly fast, even though he was carrying the little princess, Han Yen Meng, that they arrived at the scene in a matter of moments. The third elder found himself completely dumbfounded now that he was standing at the spot where Jun Moxie had ruthlessly assaulted Xiao Feng Wu, since he saw nothing more than an empty piece of land around him. Girl, are you sure this is the place? You didn't bring us to the wrong direction, did you? The third elder asked in astonishment. One really couldn't blame him. This piece of land was so clean that even a single weed didn't seem to be growing here. The entire radius of this dozen or so acre of land was completely devoid of even the maple leaves, let alone the trees. There was a maple forest here just moments ago. Are you kidding me? Even if this place was set ablaze, the ashes would still be here. This place is completely devoid of everything. It's just too clean. This really is the place, The young girl nodded hard with surety. Third grandpa. You come and see, this is where brother Xiao was lying bleeding. I can never forget this. The third elder continued to look around for a while, but still couldn't believe the truth, and hence decided to seek out a few locals to inquire about the fate of this place. And all he saw was people running about in hysteria with incense sticks in their hands, offering prayers to the heavens above. This is simply a miracle. The entire forest has been obliterated, he asked several people one after the other, and was finally left to conclude this immensely shocking finding. This piece of land was once home to a maple forest. However, for some unknown reason the entire forest vanished moments ago. At this moment, the third elder suddenly remembered another point. Girl, you said that the man was an kid when you saw him, right? Was he completely an kid? Grandpa, why do you ask this? Although no one had pinched her cheeks, they were still flushed red as if someone had. Just answer me. Was he an kid? He wasn't wearing anything on his entire body, top to bottom. And he hadn't even realized this when you spotted him? Isn't that right? The third elder asked once again in a rather imposing and dignified manner. Yes, The young girl carefully recalled the scene, and then answered with certainty. The third elder's face suddenly became deathly pale. It seems that this person was here to practice some very unique martial law, and his practice must have been so powerful that he might have unintentionally burnt away all foreign objects, including his own clothing. However, he must have been so involved in his own practice that he may not even have realized this at the time when he ended his practice. But as chance has it, he encountered Xiao Fengwu and the little princess soon after. Xiao Fengwu would have made some very rude remarks, and a person with such abilities obviously wouldn't have taken well to such insolent remarks from such a young boy. That being said, Xiao Fengwu's life was actually spared by this man's mercy. But, what kind of strength would it take to burn off an area this large? It's not very surprising that this man pays no regard to the Silver Blizzard City. If this is what he is really capable of, then I reckon that he probably wouldn't even be intimidated by the combined strength of the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor. Would the combined strength of the 8 Great Master be able to produce such a result? The 8 Great Masters could easily destroy a maple forest if they wished to, but they wouldn't be able to erase all traces of it. And they certainly wouldn't be able to do it so silently. What kind of terrifying power does this person possess? And now this person has chosen to stand against the Silver Blizzard City. At this moment, the third elder's mind was least bothered with extracting revenge for Xiao Fengwu's injuries or the insults caused to him, and was actually more bothered about the possible consequences that the Silver Blizzard City might have to face because of Xiao Fengwu's arrogance. If he had actually provoked an enemy they simply couldn't match, then this would end very badly for the Silver Blizzard City. Let's go. We have to head off to the Jun family now. The third elder acted decisively since this matter needed to be resolved immediately. In case this mysterious master was to actually investigate and find out more about my people, then I reckon that nothing will be able to withstand the madness of his fury. I'm afraid that he could destroy everyone and everything. Even if we were to flee to the Silver Blizzard City, the end result would still be the same. Even though the third elder was maintaining his composure on the surface, he was inwardly cursing Xiao Fengwu in 100 different ways. That little brat claims to the leader of the Xiao family's young generation, but he is completely failing in accomplishing anything. He has never accomplished any serious feats apart from the rapid speed of his cultivation, and has actually been landing us in a world of trouble all along. And this time, his arrogant nature has landed us against a godly being. It seems necessary to return and limit the movements of the Silver Blizzard City's experts, and ensure that they maintain a low-key profile from here on. Their presently prevalent arrogant and despotic behavior simply must be curtailed. Such a godly master actually exists in this world of mortals. Though the environment in the Silver Blizzard City's party was quite gloomy and unpleasant, but the one in the Leaf family was far gloomier and far more unpleasant in comparison. In fact, it was the gloom of death. One man had been injured to the point of an almost hopeless existence, while the corpses of their 4 fallen comrades hadn't even been buried yet. Li Yuran and the 5 remaining of his seniors were sitting together in a circle, with each person bearing a grief-stricken look on their face. Their entire attention had been focused on nabbing their culprit, the owner of that odd and mysterious throwing knife, in these recent days. And they had already investigated more than half the capital city, but hadn't been able to find any solid information as of yet. The 6th brother has recovered his consciousness now, but Li Yuran's calm face was reflecting a subtle hint of pain. But I'm afraid he'll never be able to stand up on his own feet again in this life. Solitary falcon. This was far too ruthless. An enemy with such hatred in his heart must not be allowed to exist in the same world as us. Lei Jianhong was gritting his teeth so hard that one could clearly hear the clattering sounds they were making. The veins of his forehead had turned green with rage, while his eyes seemed to be spraying fire. This is all because of me, it is because of my wishful thinking, and my delusions about seizing that Xian core which has led to this state of disability for the 6th brother, and has delivered 4 more of my brothers to the doors of death at such a young age. Even though Li Yuran's face was still quite calm, his eyes clearly revealed the underlying tears as he suddenly knelt down to his knees with a thump. Big brother, I'm at fault. I've wronged you. And I've wronged my master. I'm Ned. Lei Jianhong hurriedly stood up. Get up, young one. This isn't your fault. Then he sighed and said, even though you were the initiating cause, it's not entirely your fault. An uncountable number of people have died at the hands of their enemies ever since the beginning of martial activities. This is doomed to be the final destination in our line of work. If martial experts didn't have the fear of dying by the blade of another man, then they would simply and aimlessly roam about the land with no fear or meaning in life. Had we managed to win over the Xian core this time, then someone else would have lost the lives of their brothers, and someone else must have been left lamenting their fate. Moreover, this loss is also attributed to our miscalculations, and so you mustn't blame yourself for this, young one. Yes, that's correct. The elder brother is right. The fate of any martial artist ends with the blade of another, and even though it may be a harsh and saddening truth, but there is no point in lamenting the deceased. The woman wiped her eyes as her voice choked on her tears. We must take revenge at all costs. We must recover the debt of their blood. Yes. We must recover the debt of their blood, everyone shouted in unison. The 6th brother's enemy is someone as powerful as the solitary falcon. When it comes to this, I believe that I will have to personally come forward to solve this problem, although I don't believe that I will be able to avenge him right away. Li Yuran stood proudly staring at a distance, but I will not spare any effort within the reach of the Li family in order to resolve this matter. As for the 4 of my deceased brothers, I've searched all archives and libraries for that throwing knife's origin. And I had even launched a full-scale investigation into the capital city, but none of it bore any fruit for a long time. However, I overturned a new leaf when I found a very special incident which had previously occurred in the city, and I believe that this incident is that only thing we can link this throwing knife with. Li Yuran stated with a very serious look on his face. What incident? Lei Jianhong and the others asked in unison. I have determined that this throwing knife has never been seen in this land before. Li Yuran stated with a sense of surety. However, I have heard that the last time there was an assassination attempt on Princess Ling Meng's life, some unknown and strong expert timely released an odd and mysterious-looking throwing knife which helped Princess Ling Meng in escaping away. However, that knife remains in the princess's personal collection of treasures since that day. And since no one has seen it, no one knows what it really looks like. Some people had obviously seen knives similar to that one, but they were now residing within the hell beneath. The hitman Jun created his own unique throwing knives, and the vast majority of the people who had ever come in contact with his blades had died moments later, with the Princess Ling Meng and Yi Gu Han being the only exceptions. And Princess Ling Meng had never allowed that knife to be separated from her ever since the day she had seen it. Young one. You mean Princess Ling Meng may have a knife similar to this one in her possession? A cold awe flashed in Lei Jianhong's eyes. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 218. Remarkable coincidence. I suspect so. Therefore I've been planning on going to the Imperial Palace so I can take a look at that knife and see if it's similar to this one. Li Yuran's eyes blatantly revealed his intentions as he continued, if it's not the same, then we won't have any clues. Yes. If it's similar to this one then that would mean that this sly B***starred probably has an association with Princess Ling Meng. And since he helped her out once, I doubt that he would sit idly and watch if the princess was to be met with danger again. If we can control such a situation then we could force that despicable B***starred to show up again. Lei Jianhong fiercely nodded as an ominous glint flickered inside his eyes. However, Young Li is trying to woo Princess Ling Meng and therefore we must consider Young Li's personal interests in this matter as well. Big brother. You have to measure all proportions here. If we act rashly and hurt the princess, then it would be very detrimental to our little brother's marriage. The woman quickly glanced at Li Yuran, and leisurely stated as she readjusted her gaze to the ground. Yes. The third sister is right. We'll have to give this matter a lot of thought. Lei Jianhong nodded. One has to admit that this man wasn't very assertive by nature, and was willing to take everyone's interests and opinions into his evaluation. I disagree with the third sister. Li Yuran stated in a self-righteous tone, although her appearance and status are impressive. But she is still an outsider at the end of the day. Even if she was to really come into the Li family someday, we are still brothers first. And hence I will only agree with whatever the big brother decides when it comes to avenging the deaths of my 4 elder brothers. I won't object to big brother's decision. Nor will I spare any effort to meet his orders. If a bit of blood is necessary to avenge our 4 brothers, then I'm willing to shed it, whether it is Ling Meng's or my own. Little brother. Lei Jianhong was already quite moved, and seeing the look in Li Yuran's eyes only made him more excited. Little brother's remarks will not go in vain, and will take us 1,000 miles forward. Although our 4 brothers are dead, but they will now sleep peacefully in the hell below. Everyone nodded in approval upon seeing the look on Li Yuran's face, and then slowly turned soft and affectionate towards him. Master has stated that he will come in person to deal with the matter surrounding the 6th brother, but I'm afraid that it will take a few days' time for him to arrive in the Tianxiang city. Brothers and sisters, please suppress your sorrows for the time being, and don't act rashly. As for the matter regarding that throwing knife, kindly leave that to me. Li Yuran sighed. However, I feel most guilty for disturbing Master's practice. It's a crime that I cannot even be punished for with 1,000 deaths. Little brother, don't you know that the Master has always pampered you more than any other disciple? Everyone warmly spoke up together to comfort Li Yuran. The atmosphere had suddenly changed to a very harmonious one. The Li family had been supplying for the livelihood and all other necessary resources of Lei Wu Bei's school ever since Li Yuran had been accepted as his disciple. Given the amount of patronage he had shown to his master over the years, Li Yuran's relationship with his master had changed to that of a family member. And although they were separated by mountains and valleys, Lei Wu Bei would act like a family member would in case the Li family required it. In fact, he'd probably do more. It could be said that Lei Wu Bei had really overpampered Li Yuran, and had played an even bigger role in spoiling the young man's temper than his own grandfather had. However, we cannot sit idly before the master's arrival. Li Yuran's eyes revealed the blatancy of his desires. Brothers, you know that the current sources of our information are very limited, and our people are facing severe restrictions even within the scope of the Tianxiang city. Thus, your younger brother is now in need of a very urgent help from you, but I've already failed you once. And to ask you for this now, I don't have the words. We are brothers. So how's your family matter, not ours? Tell us. What bothers you? Lei Jianhong asked in a genuinely dissatisfied tone. He was already quite emotionally moved at this point, and therefore, he was likely to promise Li Yuran for anything that the latter asked for. Thank you, big brother. Li Yuran's face seemed to be covered with state of difficulty and distress. My problem resides with the underground world of this city. I had been using the city's underground gangs to control the northern part of the capital city, but a freak combination of factors ever since the incident at the Tang family have resulted in my networks going idle, which is causing me a lot of inconvenience. Even if I could still get the news in a timely manner, but I still cannot. A few underground gangs? Haha. What kind of a problem would they be? Lei Jianhong smiled fiercely. These last few days have been very depressing for us since we cannot provoke a foe of the solitary falcon's strength. But these shrimps would act as a good way for us to vent out our anger. So don't worry, little brother. We will unite the city's underworld for you before the master arrives in the city. And then we'll hand it over to you. Thank you for your help, big brother. Now I can finally remove this big rock I've been carrying on my heart. The Li family's strength will rise to new heights because of your help, my brothers and sister. Li Yuran thanked his companions in joy, and then gnashed his teeth with grief and indignation. I shall immediately focus on getting into the palace to investigate the enemy of our brothers. But each day will now pass like a year for me. If I can't even find out about the enemy who took the lives of my brothers, then what good would I be? There's no need to be so formal with your family, little brother. Since you'll be entering into the palace with such a big objective in mind, I urge that you be very careful while exploring and investigating this matter surrounding the throwing knife. We will wait for you to come back with the good news upon your success. Lei Jianhong and the others stood up, their faces revealing a very earnest and concerned expression. Yes, big brother. Although we want this power, but the Li family cannot come out in the open in this regard, and we can only manipulate the scene from backstage. Li Yuran smiled as he warned his companions of this very critical point, therefore the actions taken in this matter must be cautiously evaluated. Indeed, we clearly understand the nature of this task. Little brother, don't look so serious. We will take care of this. Lei Jianhong broke into laughter. Once has to note the remarkability of this coincidence. Li Yuran and Jun Moxie, two potential opponents, each mutually unaware of the other's involvement, had decided to pick the same option and at the same time. Moreover, they had both chosen the same goal: the capital's underworld. Moreover, the means of these two youngsters were also surprisingly similar. Jun Moxie had lured and enticed Hai Chen Feng with favors, and had then decided to take advantage of the situation. Then, he made very cumbersome calculations to gain favors with the solitary falcon, and had chosen to use his identity to safeguard the Jun family's position and managed to achieve his goal somehow. Li Yuran, on the other hand, had played on the emotional sentiments of his fellow apprentices to achieve the same objective. Although the means used by each man had its own merits and demerits, with neither method being superior or otherwise, but both sets of strategies were equally shameless and despicable in nature. Jun Moxie had achieved his goals by hook or by crook. Li Yuran had achieved his by being self-centered, leaving no space for the needs of his own friends. Another surprising coincidence would be in the fact that both men would unleash a bunch of Sky Xian experts in the capital city. The difference is that Jun Moxie's soldier, Hai Chen Feng, would have a higher starting point, whereas Li Yuran's side had better numbers. At this point, the game resided in balance. Both men were abundantly confident of their position at this point, already feeling that they had achieved their objective. The shadows of these two youngsters had been associated with most of the major events that had taken place in the city in recent times, and one could sense that their actions would inevitably lead to several more. Had any man been lesser than the other, the storm wouldn't have been this terrifying. However, even though these two men were provoking such a huge storm inside this paradise, neither man had any knowledge of the other man's involvement. In fact, these two men were thinking the exact same thing. They both wished to manipulate the circumstances from behind the scenes, but neither man seemed willing to appear in flesh. Even though Jun Moxie was aware of Li Yuran's existence, and was fully aware that Li Yuran was the Li family's protege, but he'd never consider Li Yuran to be his opponent since Li Yuran didn't deserve that position in his mind. What would an insignificant man like Li Yuran be worth in the eyes of a proud man like Jun Moxie? On the other hand, even though Li Yuran was also aware of Jun Moxie's existence, Jun Moxie's worth was even lesser in Li Yuran's eyes. How could a debauchee be a worthy opponent in the eyes of the young Master Li? He too had obviously completely ignored Jun Moxie. Even though they were unaware of each other's actions, they already despised each other. However, they were both doing the same thing, and that too, using similar methods. The first real battle between these two men was just about to begin. And even though this real collision between these two men was about to take place, it was destined to take place in the dark, with both men already having chosen to remain hidden. Even their Xian Qis were at the same level, the peak of the gold Xian realm, and yet both men had mobilized Sky Xian experts in their support. Jun Moxie was being supported by Hai Chen Feng, with the Blue Master, Meng Hongchen, standing behind them, whereas Lei Jianheng was being supported by the cold-blooded Master, Lei Wubei. Even in this regard, the playing field was again leveled. Who would win? And who would lose? Irrespective of the victor and loser, two of the 8 great masters, Lei Wubei and Meng Hongchen, were destined to a path of hatred in all this confusion. The scramble for the control of the city's underworld between these two young masters was about to unleash a plethora of earth-shattering characters, which would obviously trigger a huge storm. One has to say, such a wonderful act can only be choreographed by the heavens above. This had to have been an act of providence. The Jun family. Hai Chen Feng had already snuck out after receiving his treatment, and was already flexing his muscles to unite the city's underworld. The solitary falcon had taken residence with the Jun family, and Hai Chen Feng was unlikely to come looking for trouble with him unless he was strong enough. This, of course, was one aspect Jun Moxie could control at his whim. The solitary falcon had already completely immersed himself in his practice, and even though Jun Moxie had tried to incite him a few times, the solitary falcon had paid no attention to any of it since his practice had taken him over like an obsession, to the point where he didn't even care about his own bodily weaknesses. The little Lolita would serve the tea, and would then tiptoe her was backwards. Fatty Tang was doing his best to lay low next doors. So much so that he would even try to control the sound of his own breathing, let alone find the courage to cough or fart, fearing that even the slightest of movement may provoke a disaster and might land him a one-way ticket straight to hell. Things had momentarily calmed down at the Jun residence. The reason being that none of this involved Jun Moxie's exceptional talents. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 219. Guan Qing Han's Doubts. The young Master Jun had already grown bored and edgy by now. After teaching the solitary falcon some moves of the 9-eagle transformation law, clearing his doubts, and watching him practice them once, the young Master Jun simply took off, leaving the solitary falcon to his own measures. I'm not cut out to be a teacher, the young Master Jun muttered to himself as he left. Guan Qing Han stood in the middle of his small courtyard, wearing a cold and complex expression on her face, while her desolate frame resembled a solitary snowflake in contrast to the flowery setting of her surroundings owing to the white dress she was wearing at the moment. Sister-in-law, when did you come over? Why didn't you allow little Ku to notify me? Jun Moxie approached her cautiously. The solitary falcon's coffin-like expression was a stark contrast to this ice-cold expression of Guan Qing Han's, which seemed to resemble the snow-capped mountains instead. Although Jun Moxie had grown accustomed to dealing with the solitary falcon's expression, but Guan Qing Han's expression seemed to igniting the visual of an infernal ocean of blood amidst this flowery paradise within his mind. This is a really marvelous and pleasing sight. Ah. You were busy earlier, so I didn't disturb you. Guan Qing Han's expression had always been quite cold, but it seemed far more complex today. Her cool, melancholy and preoccupied eyes were gazing at the flowers in the courtyard as she spoke in a faint voice. One could search the entire capital, but you still wouldn't find any plants lusher than the ones in the Jun family's courtyards. It's late autumn now, and these plants should have already withered by now. It's a wonder that they still bloom. And even amongst the Jun family's courtyards. Yours, mine and third uncle's courtyards have the most lush flowers when compared to the rest. And amongst these 3 courtyards, yours is much better off than mine and third uncle's. I take very precise care of my plants, but you're not even here to look after of your plants. I have no idea how you manage this. Isn't this one big mystery? Jun Moxie was left completely dumbfounded. He had long been aware of the observations Guan Qing Han was making at the moment, but he hadn't been able to conceal this flaw. Anyway, her words seemed sure rather than being a casual observation. He was always practicing, whether it was gathering aura from the surroundings around him, or circulating the pure aura from the Hongjun Pagoda. Although humans were unable to feel this aura, but plants are very sensitive to it. Moreover, this aura was very beneficial for their growth, and although it was already late autumn, the plants which dwelled within a certain range of the young Master Jun's courtyard still blossomed, making the area a paradise for the human eyes, whereas the flowers elsewhere withered. This aspect obviously opposed the common understanding. The young Master Jun had been aware of this fact for a long time now, but couldn't control it nonetheless. Everyone had already grown accustomed to this since they believed that flowers could blossom even in autumn if given the proper care. However, this setting was doomed to be too attractive to the human eye in case these courtyards were to continue looking lush and full of life even in the winters. When that time came, even a fool could tell that something was amiss. There's nothing weird about them. This is just the byproduct of our family's excellent geomancy. Haha, so I suppose that it's a good thing that you came here to enjoy the happy and joyous life within our family. Sister-in-law, haha. Even though Jun Moxie was laughing on the exterior, His mind was already contemplating means to alter this situation. This won't work. I'll switch the flowers here to plum blossoms. Plum blossoms can grow and thrive openly in the winters without any problems. Ah, I live a happy and joyous life. Guan Qinghan's eyes were still staring at a green leaf in front of her as she continued in a faint voice, yes. I'm really blessed. Jun Moxie immediately sensed the mistake of his words, and felt like slapping his mouth for uttering them. Irrespective of her daughter-in-law status and the respect that came with it, Guan Qinghan was still a widow in the family at the end of the day. What enjoyment would there be in that? You've had a very hard and exhausting time these past few days. Guan Qinghan cleared up her mind a bit, and a faint but rare smile surfaced on her usually cold face. Third brother, I wish to ask you a few questions, if it's okay? Please ask sister-in-law, and I will answer anything that I'm capable of answering. Jun Moxie immediately replied back. Although I don't know how you did it, but I heard third uncle say that you claim to have already resolved the matter surrounding the Shui Han manor. Even though the third uncle seemed convinced, but I really cannot believe it yet. Therefore, now that you're here in front of me, tell me, have you really taken care of it? Guan Qinghan's head was still hanging down while her eyes were still fixed at the flowers in front of her. A breeze rolled in and softly brushed aside her hair, exposing her delicate skin and half of her fair neckline and face. Let's say, it's at least been temporarily taken care of. Jun Moxie unintentionally discovered the beauty of her skin, and not because he wanted to look at her. But he still stole a glance since such opportunities were quite rare. Since you're so sure, then I'll just have to wave aside my doubts and believe that even though I don't know where and why you keep going out all the time these days, but it is only for the betterment of the family, and that you just do this in order to make preparations for dealing with the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor. Right? Guan Qinghan smiled. When I heard the third uncle speak of this, he sounded very impressed. By my understanding, the third uncle has only ever admired grandfather and father-in-law in this manner, and no one else. You're the third man he admires so much. Jun Moxie's belly puffed to control his unspoken criticisms. Uncle, why did you open your mouth so big and leak out so much? And admire my means? You might as well list out the things I do. This, that, it's, he. In fact, it was just a matter of chance. Jun Moxie touched his nose, completely unaware of what he was saying since the sight of her delicate skin was still whirling around in his eyes. Guan Qianhan, on other hand, was completely unaware of her brother-in-law's unscrupulous gaze since her head was still hung low. I also heard Uncle say that you allowed me to win the last time we contested. He said that your skills are far superior to mine and that you were simply exercising control to avoid hurting me. Guan Qinghan simply didn't know what to think anymore, and her fair skin suddenly turned a beautiful pink in shade. This hint of blush on her fair skin was especially very tempting for Jun Moxie, and he simply couldn't stop himself from stealing a glance of this visual feast. Jun Moxie swallowed down a mouthful of saliva and then replied with difficulty, Uncle was just bragging. Don't believe him. I really don't have that kind of skill. I am willing to believe it. If you can single-handedly relieve the Jun family from its difficulties, then it's only reasonable that your strength is far superior to mine. Guan Qinghan sighed in comfort. Moxie, you've really grown up, you're no longer that. Jun Moxie was already sweating bullets. His elder sister-in-law was only 22 years old in age. But she looked far older than even the 30 years olds he had met in his 2 lifetimes when she spoke up, You've really grown up. Jun Moxie suddenly felt as if something had short-circuited inside his head. Sister-in-law, you're only in your 20s, it's difficult to listen to your words when you talk like old people. Jun Moxie's face shriveled up. If he was to revert back to being the assassin he had been in his previous life, then such words would have provoked an unstoppable storm of bloodbath. Uncle said that you've been concealing your strengths to bide more time, and that we've all misunderstood you. Guan Qing Han chuckled for a moment, and her face immediately melted like ice, and seemed as if a glacier had suddenly melted and had given way to blossoming flowers. She tilted her head slightly and glanced at Jun Moxie with a meaningful glance as she said, "However, there's one thing that I just don't understand, that previously ridiculous behavior of yours. Was that also a part of this low-key profile you were trying to keep?" Sister-in-law. You know. This, that are. I was forced to do all this because of our family situation. He. The family situation is one matter. And that I naturally understand that aspect. But what relation did that have to do with the rubbish behavior you were exhibiting in front of me? Guan Qianhan's face suddenly turned cold as she turned to face Jun Moxie for the first time today, and stared at him with eyes as sharp as a phoenix's. It was also just a part of the camouflage. Jun Moxie had already started cursing the original Jun Moxie in his mind. That be asterisk starred and his behavior, and now I have to answer for him. Camouflage? Guan Qinghan looked at him coldly. If there's ever another one of these camouflage activities, then I'll leave the Jun residence forever. And I'll never come back. Guan Qinghan wanted to say, "I'll beat you up," but instantly thought that he'd be stronger, and hence hastily changed her words. These change of words, however, were no reflection of her actual meaning. Yes. From now, I won't ever dare. Jun Moxie immediately opened his mouth to say that he wouldn't, but anyone could tell that he hadn't even thought it through. A woman's honor and integrity, is that just a joke for you to make fun of? Guan Qinghan was clearly very angry at this moment. What else can it be used for? Jun Moxie opened his mouth and blurted these words out in a moment of pure muddle-headedness, and then immediately realized how ill-intended his words sounded. This sentence was naturally a big taboo, and he knew that he'd be d*ned to say them in this life, or the previous one. You. Guan Qinghan's anger boiled up in an instant and her eyes suddenly reddened with rage. Then, she took a deep breath as her face hardened again. "So you haven't changed at all," she stated as she turned around and left. "I need to watch my mouth." The young Master Jun stood stunned at his spot for a little while with a dejected feeling in his heart, and then suddenly yelled out, "D*mn it fatty tang. Do you think you're here to enjoy a life of retirement? When am I going to see those plans? I'm not in a good mood today. So make sure that you make me happy, else don't ask me to help you in losing weight again." Left with no other choice, he decided to vent out his anger on Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan crashed out his room, well, waving a pile of papers in his hand. "You see, boss, I've already sorted matters out in accordance with what you said. See? Take a look, this should be okay." Jun Moxie grabbed those papers and stared at them as he flipped a couple of pages, and then stuffed them back into Tang Yuan's hand. Yes, this is good. But you haven't even looked at this properly." Tang Yuan felt a bit wronged upon seeing that his hard work had been ignored in this manner. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. It is not that he didn't wish to look at those papers carefully, but he saw nothing more than incomprehensible matter in them, and simply understood that it was already beyond his knowledge. The young Master Jun had never anticipated that all the unlinked gibberish he could remember from his previous life would actually transform into such a thick pile of business plans in Tang Yuan's hands. This fatty is just too talented. Why didn't I find him in my previous life? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 220. A Plan to Make a Fortune. I believe in you. I really believe a lot in you. Jun Moxie encouragingly patted on Tang Yuan's shoulder. No matter what you do, I will support you because I believe in you. Therefore, I don't need to see this or give any opinions on it, since I know that no matter what you do, people will come and buy our products. Third young, Tang Yuan was already moved to tears. In fact, even his nose had started to snivel tears. I had heard people speak about friendships to the death. But today I've understood what it really means. This feeling of being trusted is simply amazing. I'm so moved. I swear that I will work as hard as it takes. And I'll work with great care. And I'll spare no effort till death puts an end to my life. I'll be loyal and I'll do whatever it takes to make our project a true success. I'll willingly die 1,000 deaths if I cannot live up to it. The young Master Jun had already grown accustomed to the fatty's powerful and excessive boot-licking by now, and had in fact become immune to it. Therefore, he simply stood there smiling and nodding as he gracefully listened to this extremely nauseating boot-licking, pretending as if he was actually enjoying it. A fat pile of flesh was constantly flattering with tears in his eyes, while the other man was peacefully smiling and listening in silence with an intoxicated look on his face. The image of this scene fell into the solitary falcon's line of sight, and the master simply wasn't able to stand the sight of it. His ears suddenly stiffened up in disgust, while the expression on his face clearly depicted the trauma of his mind. I think I'll vomit. The pale-faced solitary falcon whistled out of the courtyard. This old man needs to find a more appropriate place. He didn't even turn around to take another look back at the scene, since it had already transcended the degree of disgust even a great master could tolerate. Aha! The young Master Jun narrowed his eyes and exerted himself as he forcefully patted Tang Yuan on his shoulders once again, almost throwing the fatty down to the ground in the process. And then arrogantly shrugged his shoulders as he laughed. Fatty, you're really awesome. You're turning into the solitary falcon's nemesis, ah. Ha ha. What did I do? Tang Yuan blankly wiped his tears, and instead started sweating from shock and fear now upon realizing that he might have offended the solitary falcon somehow. You did well. Very well. Really good, ah. Jun Moxie wantonly praised Tang Yuan, since he had never expected that his biggest headache would actually leave after feeling nauseated by the fatty's excessive flattering. I've been trying to plant flowers for relief against the sun, but this accidental willow actually did the real trick, didn't it? We're going to do an exclusive auction for that fine wine you've been drinking these days. Fatty, your first job is to use that wine of mine to make us a lot of money. Do you understand what I mean? Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows as he patted the fatty's shoulders again with a sense of joy in his heart. That's not an issue. Wine as good as this one is rarely ever put up for auction, and since we don't have much of it either, I believe that setting up a reserved price of even 500 taels per jar won't be a problem. Tang Yuan stated with surety, completely aware that this price was much higher than the market price of the currently available wines. A reserved price of 500 taels per jar? Was that a joke? Jun Moxie shook his head as he mercilessly rejected the idea. Is that too high? Although it could also be set at 300 taels. But that price would be less for a wine of such high quality. Although I haven't done much research on wines, but the wine you've come up with is of much higher quality than the ones available in the market. And a price of 300 taels would be a pitiful price to fetch for this wine, since this wine is much better than the ones I'm used to drinking. The final price of this wine should be very substantial though, and I calculated to fetch a price of around 3,000 taels per jar. Tang Yuan smacked his lips even though he sounded a bit unsure of himself. No. A final auction price of 3,000 taels per jar? Fatty. It seems that you really haven't done much research on wines. My goal is 12,000 taels per jar. And not a penny less. Jun Moxie stuck out his finger and shook it while biting his teeth to show his seriousness. Balls. Tang Yuan suddenly jumped up and leapt almost 3 feet above the ground. Then, his body's fat suddenly crashed down to the ground upon his landing, and flapped a few times as it hit the ground while his belly reverberated up and down twice. Jun Moxie had never seen Tang Yuan jump like this ever since he had first met him, and had hence never imagined that the fatty could be capable of jumping 3 feet in the air in this manner. This fatty is truly a peerless talent. Ah! Tang Yuan's mouth made a hissing sound as he sucked in some air, feeling a bit out of breath after jumping up, while his face was twitched in pain under the impact of the collision between the ground and his body's fat. You think that this wine is some sort of a fairyland drink? Ah! Just drink 1 cup and you live on forever? Are you joking with me, boss? This is impossible, it is simply impossible. I wasn't joking with you. And this definitely isn't a joke. Jun Moxie waved his hand, smiled and then said, "That's right. 12,000 taels per jar. Yes. And I said that the reserved price would be 12,000, not the final one." Tang Yuan was left speechlessly staring at Jun Moxie, seemingly ready to faint at any moment. "Don't worry, fatty. I've developed an excellent strategy." Jun Moxie smiled mysteriously, turned around and then said, "I've found a good place which is located right opposite to the magnificent jewel hall. Fatty, you're going to be a very big shopkeeper soon, so you better get ready for it. There is an auspicious day 3 days ahead, so we'll open our shop for business then." That fast? The fat man was a bit startled. "Third Young, isn't there a brothel opposite to the magnificent jewel hall? When did you commandeer that place? Isn't that place a little too, and it's opposite to the magnificent jewel hall in particular? I don't know if your family's elders have told you, but my family's elder, especially my father in particular, has repeatedly told me that I simply cannot go about provoking the magnificent jewel hall's people." "You're a little too terrified, aren't you? Did you forget what we did to that Li kid? We have plenty of tricks in our bag. You just finish the decorations." Jun Moxie continued in a contemptuous tone, "You'll just be a wooden club. Just make the arrangement like I've told you, and you'll be all right." Fatty Tang was at a loss for a while, and then he suddenly patted his thigh. "You got it, boss. There's actually no place better than the ones near the magnificent jewel hall. Ah! I'll show them who the daddy is." Right after making this bold remark, the fatty suddenly broke into tears again. "Third Young, you have to help me with one more thing." "What happened?" Jun Moxie asked in a vigilant tone. "First tell me." "My fiancée and her family wish to see me. In fact, the eldest of their family is coming to see me with her." Tang Yuan was still stroking and comforting his belly from previously falling to the ground. "They've heard that I've been kicked out of my house, and she wishes to comfort me. But it is actually. Your fiancé is quite open-minded. I've really never heard of an arranged couple meeting in this manner before their wedding. This isn't a good thing, fatty. This woman isn't working up to the expectations of the society." Jun Moxie scratched his chin, and then smiled. "What help do you want from me?" "I just want you to accompany me when I go." Fatty Tang's spirits seemed to have lifted already. "I just want you to carry me back in case I get beaten up tomorrow. I've heard that their eldest has quite a temper." "Are you joking? This is your first meet as a couple, which is equivalent to a blind date. So what are you pulling me along for? Why would you want the red-lined leaves to appear together with greener ones?" Jun Moxie was looking down at his chest indicatively, And so Tang Yuan also leaned in to watch. You look at my body. And then you look my face. He said as he patted his body. Well, do you understand? Understand what? Tang Yuan blinked his eyes, completely at a loss with regard to Jun Moxie's words. What I'm saying is obvious. But you just don't understand it. You already cut a very sorry figure. And then you wish to take me, a graceful-looking handsome young man straight out of a girl's dream. Who will look at you when you're being accompanied by a man like me? Jun Moxie's mouth spat out some saliva since he finished his entire sentence in one single go, focusing entirely on admiring himself while making no effort to restrain his pride either. Why would they look at you? You're just there to help. Tang Yuan looked at him in disdain, and now that you've said it, how does the word narcissistic sound as your new nickname? Whether I'm narcissistic or not is not of importance here. The key here is that, what if your fiancé starts to fancy me tomorrow? It really wouldn't be very alarming. Put yourself in her shoes. What you would choose? A beautiful tree or dirty mud? Jun Moxie stated as he tilted his eyebrows in a meaningful manner. That could happen. Tang Yuan scratched his chin in serious consideration, and started contemplating means to eliminate any possibilities of it. Maybe you could put on some makeup again? You could paint a few pockmarks on your face. And perhaps a few scars as well. Then you won't look this handsome, right? Jun Moxie completely crumbled and then retreated in defeat. I'll go and find Uncle so we can send out those business invitations for the start of our first business day. Don't come looking for me even if you have something important. I'll be very busy. Don't forget to accompany me for tomorrow's meeting. This is a very important thing. The hitman accelerated his pace when he heard the fatty shouting behind him. After departing from the young Master Jun's courtyard, the solitary falcon went to find Jun Wuyi to request a more appropriate training quarters, and was soon after accommodated within Jun Wuyi's courtyard. Jun Wuyi's temperament was far more courteous than his nephew's. And even though he was at a fairly advanced stage in his own personal training, he didn't understand many of the problems the solitary falcon was facing. Therefore, he decided to allow the solitary falcon to commandeer his courtyard and moved himself out of there. As Jun Wuyi moved out his training area, the solitary falcon took control of it, and set about to his tasks once again. He'd try to mimic the tricks Jun Moxie had taught him, and he'd sit down on the ground feeling that he'd made a mistake somewhere, and would then resolve to frowning for a little while as a result before getting back to it. This was an obvious case of the turtle dove taking control of a pigeon's nest. However, Jun Wuyi didn't seem to be minding it at all, and seemed very satisfied in just enjoying the autumn sunlight. On the contrary, when the young Master Jun walked in, the invitations? Auspicious day for opening business? Jun Wuyi saw the thick pile of invitations, looked at them one by one, and couldn't help but sigh. Moxie, you seem to really favor the rich and despise the poor. You've only included the nobility and the rich families in this, and you've completely left out any ordinary families from your list. Third uncle, our auction house only has expensive items on sale, and so only the rich and wealthy would be capable of purchasing them, while the common people would actually be even afraid to enter such an expensive shop. Think about it. If one jar of wine was reserved at 12,000 taels, then could a common person afford to drink it? Jun Moxie flapped his eyelids. I've already included the names of every rich person in the Tianxiang city, and I will peel off every penny from their hide this time. Although money isn't everything under the sky, but it is still an entity of significance. A chill ran down Jun Wuyi's spine. His own nephew's thoughts were sounding a little too crazy to him. Uncle, don't you worry. This is only the start. I'll let them drink all the wine they want before the auction ends, And then I won't give them any more. Then, I'll wait till they have to go back to drinking that awful wine they had been drinking earlier. Ha ha ha. Then we'll gain a complete monopoly over the market. And we'll only sell a very limited number of wine jars in each auction. So if they have to drink it, ha ha ha, they'll have to come up with some real money for it. And the prices of my wine will shoot sky high. Ha ha ha. Jun Moxie burst into laughter. This story will be continued to chapter 221. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.